So for this session, we're going to be looking at Qlik for our data tool demo. And for just an overview of the tool itself, it's used mainly for business intelligence and different data management functions. There's a lot of different features in it that are pretty intuitive and kind of designed to show different results from the data that you're working with. And has different artificial intelligence capabilities that we'll look at a little bit that can kind of learn from the data that you have to make suggestions as you're working with it. And then for kind of example industries, this is super broad. It could pretty much be used for, I don't know if there's any industries that I think like wouldn't be suited for it, but it seems like a pretty broad tool that can be used. But I just gave examples of retail and manufacturing because the example data that we're going to be looking at involves sales data. I feel like a lot of times with BI, people bring up like, oh, KPIs and different measurements like that. And I feel like that's kind of easily translated to like retailer, different sales platforms for how that works. And then I just put a link in here for Qlik for where I got some of the information from for this. And for what we're actually going to be looking at, the trial that I'm signed up for is for Qlik Sense, and it is a cloud software environment for data analysis. There are, I want to say there's still like a desktop app version of it as well, if not one of the other Qlik products that has some similar capabilities. And then for the data, like working with it in the actual environment, much like some of the other data tools on the market, there is the ability to share the products that you're making with it. So for what we'll be looking at, they call them like apps for the specific data that you have like as you're loading it up, and then kind of to make it transferable to people that might not necessarily be in like data management roles or working directly with Qlik. There's the capability to share it through different methods for the organizations that might use it. And then the other thing too, for the source for this one and for the next slide, there are a bunch of different like tutorials that I'll show in a little bit for some of like their Learning Hub atmosphere, but that's where some of this information is coming from as well. So then the actual data set that we'll be using as an example is sales data from department stores as like a supply end of it. So it has a couple different like categories that we'll look at, like product category and different sales associated with that. And then this last slide are just some links that I've got pulled up that we'll take a look at as well for just some of the different channels for accessing Qlik and for some of the different resources with it. Also, I didn't mention it to start, but for throughout this, obviously feel free if you two have like questions or anything like that. Oh, my session timed out. Let me refresh that. Just feel free to unmute or just pop something in the chat. So for this first tab I've got up here, so this is just the landing page for Qlik itself. This is, I wasn't really sourcing much from here just to show like kind of the different, I don't know, landing pages, like some of the other products on the market. It has like every different category that you might be looking at with it. And then this was another one that I sourced just for a little bit of that information. I close that. This is going to be tutorial, but let me scoot this over. On some of the different tools that we're looking at, I know that there's different kind of conditions for having trials. A lot of them, like Qlik itself, has a free trial, so that's what I'll be showing in this demo. But I want to say it's like a 30-day trial for that. And then I think the only other thing I wanted to show for where I'm basing this information off of, it's tied to one of the tutorials that is in the Qlik Learning Hub. And this just from like just kind of like introductory experience kind of going through it. There are a lot of different like methods for gaining this information. So if you want to watch video tutorials, there's that. The one that I'm looking at was kind of given as a like PDF that you go through the steps on. And for some of the different resources here, you can find them with different trying to think. I think more like interactive, like as you go, parts of the actually like using the cloud environment. But I think not like super familiar with this, but I want to say for the courses themselves, there's like certain things for like, oh, business track or things like that. But there's also from like what I looked at, I just did like a filter for, hey, like what are the free different tutorials that are there. And it's like a lot of different tools you can go in and you can search like if you have something specific that you want to look up to try and learn. But I think it's pretty like user friendly on that end of it. So I'll close out of the learning. But then for people that are getting like super fancy with it, there's like trained courses and things like that that you can end up like paying for. But this is just based on the free information. So for this, I didn't have like an out of the box like data set of my own. I don't have like sales data on hand, and I didn't really find a data set that I thought would be better for this than the one that this was given like specifically for this tutorial. But the actual I'll click through this, but the data set that goes with it came as, oh no, sorry, it said I didn't have access and I got worried for a second. But yeah, this was the one that I used, but it has like files that you download and then you can actually like bring in with it. So I'll go to the actual dashboard of it. So loading up the environment, Qlik itself has a bunch of different like features up here, like in the top tab to kind of show you where you are, and then you can try and see like different, like if you needed to go to like the management council, that's more of like for your actual like user material. My Qlik has like some of the account like settings and things like that for it. But for this actual part of it, if you open it up, if it doesn't have anything in it to begin with, you can go to add data. And then from this, there's a data catalog. If you have data sets that are already stored like in the environment, you can bring them in from there, or you can do files and other sources. And that's where for like this one, for example, with like that downloaded data, like that's what was brought in. And then this view that we're looking at right now, so this is the actual like data manager for it. And I'll go to this. There's a feature down at the bottom for edit. So that's kind of where some of like the customization can come in for like the data sets that you're working with. I know for just like general experience in data, I feel like we can always get like a mixed bag of like how like clean our data is like as we're working with it. I think this has like some of the different capabilities for like formatting your data before you've actually brought it in. So like before it's, I guess, gone like too far down the cycle, you can go in through this and kind of work with like what you have. If you know, you have like the columns here, so we can see kind of base things. We've got like customer, product category, different things that I didn't necessarily like work with, like the specific names. I didn't really work with that too much, but we can see there's some different like quantitative variables with it for like unit price of some of the different items that are there, the amount in sales for the product themselves. And then I think, let me see. So from add field, I just did as an example, it wasn't in like the data itself, like out of the box and like the downloaded Excel file for this, but I just did an example of like unit price per like freight weight for it. So if you have like two columns, kind of like you could in like any programming language, like if you have two columns that you want to do a calculation on, you can do it in here. Then I guess the other thing about this as well, like for editing, like in this mode for just changing some of the names and stuff, you can do that like from here. But let me see. Just click through this just to show an example of it. So for the actual name, that would be like the column that we could give something, and then it kind of gives you kind of starter functions as well. Like if you know, like, hey, I want to, capitalize all of maybe like one of my string categories or something like that. So it's kind of like a builder in that sense if you don't like know out of the box maybe what you want to work with. And then this has a drop down of the different categories, so you don't have to like type them all out if you didn't want to. And then this has some of the different functions as well in that. So I know like for mine, for example, I typed in like, okay, I want to divide by this, but then, okay, if I want to round in it, kind of like in some different programming languages, you can add in like more details for, hey, I want to round to the nearest like 10th place or something like that. So I have, I think, to the nearest like half dollar, if that's the like the currency that this is in. So then for this as well, once it's in edit mode, you can also get a summary of the actual like columns themselves, like before we dive like deeper into what's there. So if you, let me see, might have to, okay, yeah. So if you hit like in this like upper area, you can see for like each of the different columns that are there, it'll give you some kind of like out of the box like stats on like what's there. So like the number of distinct values in the data set for like that specific category, like the total values, kind of information that you might get from like an info function in Python or something like that. But you can also, like if you go into this part, so it gives you kind of like a nice little graph too of what's there. And for something like this, if there are a lot of variables for what's there, it might not necessarily show you the whole like graph at once. So you can use this to kind of see different parts of it. But then also with this, if you're looking for like more customization for like if you want to do a find and replace, if you know, hey, maybe this one customer that I'm working with, like maybe they changed their name or something like that. Like you can go through and do like a replace in this setting. There's also an area to set nulls. So depending on like what the analysis is that you're working with, maybe for some reason you like find out that one piece of the data isn't like reputable anymore. You could do like the set nulls for that. And then I think for this one, there's also, yeah, like a split by if you wanted to break up, if you had something that was delimited still further than what the data already is, you can work with it from here. And then I think I'll just show another example for like the sales data itself, even though that's kind of what we'll mainly be looking at, but for something like that, just to begin with, to see, oh, maybe that's not the best because of the different ones that are there. But at least like for this, you can kind of get that like summary, like this has the summary statistics of like the min, median, average, and max for the data that's there before you even dive into it. Do you guys have like any questions for, I guess, like the editor view of it? Okay. So then,
yeah, I
oh,
have
sorry, Amanda.
just like, no, totally okay. I have a couple additional notes.
Okay, cool, yeah.
But keep going if you have more.
Oh no, you can if you want to give the notes on this part of it, that works.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say is one of the differentiators of Qlik is that they have backend and front end compatibility and capability. So you can do lightweight data engineering as well as analysis and visualization in Qlik, which you cannot do in Tableau and Power BI. Like there's very simple data modeling in those last two applications, but Qlik goes above and beyond in the capabilities to do back-end analysis.
Okay. Yeah, I think I didn't like dive too deep into it. Let me just X this out. But I know for Amanda, maybe so I haven't worked with Qlik like prior to this, but I know for like this part of it, there's like the data model viewer and kind of setting up, I guess, like some of the different.
Yeah, exactly. So like this capability, while you can do some transformations in those other visualizations front end, this type of data transformation is not available in those. It's Qlik very much has a true backend.
Yeah, I think for that, from like the data, I guess like the data management standpoint, that seemed like a benefit. Like I said, I didn't like work with that like for this, but just for like overall, like if there's a bunch of different, obviously like data for an organization like in one place, to have that kind of like logic to it. And go back to the data manager for what we were looking at before. So once the data is like loaded, and if it's in like a state that you're happy with, then for the different like actually working with it to make some of the different visualizations. Let me check here for the sheets. So for this, this shows an example of some of the different just kind of visualization types that you can make with Qlik. But to get to that point, they have an insight advisor. I'll click on that, which is kind of what I mentioned before for like looking at the data itself, like as you bring it in and kind of seeing like, okay, these are like the qualitative and quantitative variables for it, like what might be something suggested for working like with the data itself. So from this, there's like different routes of it. Like if you know out of the box, like, hey, I want to do, let me see what's here. So this one just has like a couple just as a preview, but if we do like view all analyses over here, this shows some of the different ones. Like I mentioned KPI earlier, I feel like that's just kind of like a hot button thing for people to use as their measure of performance, like across different businesses. You can also, like, depending on the data for some of these, like to show if it's something like time series data for some of these like process control ones. There's also, I have, I'll show it afterwards. It's not like an awesome example of it, but I thought it was neat that they had like k-means clustering in this. I've worked like with that for R, but it's nice like if you have your like unlabeled data that you're bringing in and you just want to do that without maybe all the hassle of coding that yourself, then this could be beneficial.
Yeah, that is a huge thing.
Yeah.
To not have to like code all of your variables to
Mhm.
allow for k-means clustering.
Yeah, and especially I think too with like depending on the size of the data set, like if you know, like if you're not looking to like put together all those different like combinations yourself to figure out like what's going on with it. I think that's beneficial. I'm gonna go back to the main kind of landing for this, but if we go to explore your data, I believe, or maybe that's what we're already looking at. We'll click on what is sales. So this is kind of the main driver for the different examples in this, but if you look at this tab, this has like the auto analysis on it. It'll give you, like we've got up here, the KPIs, that main number that we get from it. But as you go, like if you have data that you're like looking at and you're like, hey, like this is something I want to use later or put into maybe like a dashboard or something like that, there's the feature to add to sheet. So that's kind of what we saw from that main view of like all those different visualizations. I just added a couple examples there, but then there'll also be something like this where it'll have like additional results for what you can get from the data itself. And let me see what's here. I know depending on like what the data is, so like something for like sales by customer, like for different visualizations, you might find like, hey, there's like not enough variables there for that to be something that might necessarily be helpful for me. But I think find like one of these. So then if you actually like go into like one of the visualizations that you want to look at, you can go through and like, let's say you want to change some of the different variables. It's pretty like intuitive for going in and kind of like modifying it from here. And then also, I think a lot of these, at least for like the basis of it, at least for this example, because it's kind of like the introductory, like working with Qlik, a lot of it is just based off of sums of the data itself. It's, but there's like, you could go through and do, like if you want like a unique count of something while you're working with it. And obviously for some of the different like math functions, you can like get finer with those details. But I think for this, if you like have different fields that you want to work with to make visualizations, this one isn't a great one because it just shows us a tiny table. But for that, you can kind of get the same like auto-generated like outputs from that. And I think for this, I didn't really use the ask a question feature, but I think like if you type in something, okay, yeah, like I had how many sales were there? It already told us, but you can type in something like that, and then this will, we'll just do that one again just to show it. It'll pop out that same like KPI, but I could definitely get like fancier with what you're asking it. So then I think if we go back to okay, yeah, clicking out of the like Insight Advisor for what's here. We go over, I have a couple different like sheets that I just made like as examples. I think the one that's right here. Oh, Amanda, I have to preface there's a pie chart in this. I'm sorry in advance. I know it's like not the good thing to be using, but it's it was in the tutorial, so I was like, oh, I'll just like throw it in there just to show it. But this was this like
How dare you?
I know. I was trying to find like a nice, like a pretty like horizontal bar chart that would do the same thing, but then I was like, no, I'll just it's fine.
Sometimes a pie chart is necessary. The majority of the time it's not.
I'm not condoning it. But it is a feature in Qlik if anyone decides to use it. But this part of it kind of showed for the different charts that you have. Let me see. Okay, yeah, if we go to edit sheet, so this is kind of like for like the setup of it. If you have like a vision in your head of like, okay, this is exactly like the kind of like dashboard that I want to have to work with. The different features in it, so you can like go in and get kind of crazy with all the different like sidebars to do different like measurements of whatever height of the item. Like maybe you don't want the like sum of sales to be this gigantic thing when you have other data like this table that you want to display. And then this is kind of another way to customize the like appearance of what you're looking at. This one, so a fault of my own, I don't know how to wrap text in this yet. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but that's just like a nitpicky thing about like I feel bad showing that because it's not beautiful, but that's at least has like a title to it. But for if you have like additional notes and things like that, you can always like go in and customize for that. Let me see what else is here. Alternate states we don't necessarily care about so much, but I guess the other thing too is with like the sheets themselves. So once I hit like the done editing, I'll show some of like the functionality with this, but there's also kind of the intention of the data that you have, like as you're working with it, the output of it can be something interactive for like the user to be working with once you're kind of like passing it off or sharing it with others. I think I want to say the tool. Okay, yeah, tooltips. That's kind of I think just for like the editor mode. But then so yeah, over here, it shows some of the different charts. So if you have like one that you want to add, it's pretty much like a drag and drop for like this situation. So you would drag it onto one of these for like an example. We'll like throw this right there just for fun. Oh no. But if you're putting it on something that already exists, it'll ask you like, hey, do you want to convert this thing to whatever this item is? So if you wanted to do it that way, I'll just hit cancel. But then that'll give you a prompt of, hey, like what you have a scatter plot now, what are the different fields that you want to be plotting, and then kind of going from there. I think I'm trying to remember. I'd have to look for this, but I know that there's a way to set, if you have the data like that you're working with and you have specific bins that you want to create for different categories that maybe you want to use that for different like analysis from there. That's also something that you can format. And I think, yeah, I don't think I did anything crazy with like the custom objects, but there's yeah, like weird stuff like, oh, if I want a word cloud for like maybe you have like like a natural language component to your data that's not necessarily like names or something, like that could be something kind of useful for like sharing purposes. But I think trying to remember. I want to say from the storytelling mode, like that's where you can go in and see like the interactive component of it. I could be wrong. No, yep, that's definitely wrong. I'm sorry. But there's a way to have that like presented.
Yeah, so
Amanda, do you
the
know? I'm sorry.
no, God, sorry. The storytelling mode is about creating narratives
Okay.
with the visualizations that you
Okay.
create. So you can create slides directly in the same platform
Mhm.
as you've built your data and created your visualization. So it really allows for 3 steps of that vital function.
Mhm. So you don't have to be going like across different products.
Exactly.
Um So then for this, I'm sorry, I feel really bad because I couldn't remember if it was like a thing that we could do from here or if it was something we need to go into something else for. So for the different categories that you're setting up, like if you have something like this where you have like a question or something that you're posing to maybe whoever's interacting with the data for what they want to look at. So if we wanted to like take all the data that we have here and say like, hey, we just want to look at maybe like 2015, you can get that data and then think here. I'm not, once again, I'm not like 100% sure where the button is, but there is like a feature for like saving, like once you have like something pulled up that like maybe I want to incorporate the exact charts for certain years into, like Amanda was mentioning, like the storytelling mode. You can get those like saved like snapshots of what the data actually has. And then I think so yeah, and then something like this, you can kind of like sort the table that's there, depending on, I know there's only one field for it, I believe. Just gonna check. So the my suggestions, I think, was just stuff that I had incorporated from, this was like another part of the tutorial for just showing some of the different like features. So for this, for like, edit. For like the global sales, they gave this as an example for kind of going through and doing some of the different customizations. Like for this, you can like do a different color border for what's there, but you can also like adjust the gradient for like visually what you have here for like the like low to high sales data for it. But I'm trying to look and see. I feel like that was pretty much like everything from like that main example. Oh, sorry. The main example tutorial that I had. But I didn't, if you guys have like other questions or anything you want to like look at for the product itself.
I think that was a great overview.
I'm sorry, I couldn't remember what like half the buttons are. I know they like there's like the one to take like little screenshots and stuff. But I at least like going through this, like their resources are pretty like robust for like the help features of it to like type in like your exact like question and stuff like that to figure out like where specific things are located. Or like
Yeah,
if you have, oh sorry, Amanda.
their support is very responsive.
Okay, cool. Yeah, like I know I feel like everybody has like an elusive like active chat box for somebody that might help with something, but if it's knowing that somebody's gonna like respond to a ticket in like less than a week or like something like that, then that's really helpful.
Well, I got two questions actually. One is in terms of connecting with like a backend database, did you guys get into any of that sort of thinking, and like what types of databases does it connect with, and how does that all work?
Yeah, so Qlik connects with almost every database. It's like an Azure Data Factory competitor.
Nice.
But it also allows for this unique like semi backend functionality. It's almost meant specifically for SMBs, so like small to medium sized businesses where they don't have the resources to move up to like Azure or Microsoft or any of those tier one analytics functions, but they need this to support their daily lives.
That fits well because a friend of mine worked at a small to medium sized city, and that's exactly where that tool was positioned. And I found out that there was other small to medium sized cities where this tool actually works out quite well. So so that's awesome. My other question was around the GIS side of things. So you showed a map there. Did you guys
Oh
explore
yeah.
that? And does it like if I threw at it, a set of points or something like that, would it be able to ingest those points and spray them on a map?
So I think it really depends on the granularity that you have. So if you have the points, almost all visualization products these days will allow you to map them in a GIS function.
Cool.
Obviously QGIS and ArcGIS will be more functional than others just because that is their niche. But you can put a lat long into any visualization tool these days and get exactly what you need, especially if you have decimal points.
Cool.
Yeah, I didn't look at like a set of like geographic data with this. I know it showed kind of for like the countries, but that was just like the breakdown, like just based on that. But yeah, that would have been neat to show kind of because some of like Amanda mentioned, there's like some form of that functionality and like a lot of the different things that we'll be looking at. But some, I guess you two probably already like assume this or know it, but for one thing I wanted to mention that I didn't earlier for like the different data types to bring in, the one that I loaded up was from an Excel, but it's kind of like a lot of other like data tools out there for the different form that you have. If it's like a text file or a CSV or something like that, there's like that cross like functionality there for like actually like importing the data. And then another thing with this is I was only working off of like one data set, but if you had two sets that you kind of want to like merge and like work with like at the same time, then that's like another, I guess, like feature of it. Well, but yeah, if we're,
Yeah, I
oh,
think
sorry, Amanda.
I was just gonna say, I think that makes a lot of sense for the way that ETL tools and visualization tools are going right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Steve?
No, this was great. This was a nice overview. I've never seen the product before in action. I've seen many other analytics tools, and thank you for the overview. That was awesome.
Yeah, no problem.